Welcome to episode 30.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Who Did That Voice, where we take an in-depth look at voiceovers.
The holiday season is upon us, and there is no time like the present to book your holiday getaway with 3D Travel Company. Whether you want to set sail on the high seas or visit exotic and foreign locales, maybe your dream is to see a magical mouse, or maybe you long for a getaway that will universally appeal to all. For a limited time, my listeners receive a Disney gift card with qualifying Disney vacation purchases booked and traveled by the end of 2016. For more information on booking any of these trips, go to 3dtravelcompany.com and tell them Trenton sent you.
Merry Christmas and welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Merry Christmas, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today's special guest has played Robin on Batman the Animated Series.
Robin. Huh? Batman! You okay?
Am I glad to see you?
I'll have you free in a minute.
Our special guest also had the opportunity to voice the Green Lantern on Batman the Brave and the Bold.
How unbearably pathetic.
What's pathetic, Despero, is a tyrant like you thinking you can turn the Corps into your own personal army.
Our special guest had the opportunity to be the very first actor to voice Danny Rand, Iron Fist, in The Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
What'd you say to them?
I told them I didn't want to fight.
You have some serious problems, man.
Are you gonna help me, Cage?
You look like you got it covered. Besides, Fist, no client means no money. We're heroes for hire, not heroes for freebies.
Look around. The city's going nuts. There's all this weird energy, and I'm pretty sure I saw some cowboys fighting a group of medieval knights a few streets over. We have to do something.
Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice? Today on the show, we have the very distinguished Loren Lester joining us today. Loren, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for asking me.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. I grew up with you from hearing you on Batman the Animated Series as Robin, and we will definitely dive into that more here in just a moment. But the very first thing we always like to start out with, Loren, is just to kind of get a background on who our guest is and how did you get into acting and how did voiceover become something that you got into as well?
Well, I was really lucky because I started pretty young. I wasn't quite 16 yet, and in those days, you had when you had an agent here in Los Angeles, anyway, they had all kinds of departments. So they'd have a commercial department, a theatrical department, which covered film and TV, and some of them had voiceover departments. So I was very lucky that I got into this agency that had a voiceover department. And the funny story behind that is my coach in high school, his son was at this agency, and he said, "You have a good look for commercials. You ever thought of doing them?" And of course, I dreamed of being an actor at the time, and I said, "Yeah." So he introduced me to this agent, and the rest is history. Because then the voiceover department in his agency became its own voiceover agency. I mean, that's how it is now. Most actors who do voiceovers have specifically a voiceover agent.
So they aren't as conglomerated together anymore. They've kind of become their own separate entity.
Yes, the really big agencies, like William Morris and CAA and those, they for celebrities, they cover everything within their own agency. But most journeyman actors like myself have specifically a voiceover agent and specifically a commercial agent, and I have 3 different agents.
Okay, and those are all for different types of work that you do?
Yes.
Okay. And could you explain Journeyman, a journeyman actor to us, just so that we have a better understanding of that?
Sure. It's kind of like in sports. Somebody who is called on to do a variety of different things in a variety of different roles, but isn't necessarily the star player. Some people use the term character actor. I get asked to do different kinds of parts in different kinds of movies and TV shows and voiceovers and commercials. So I go where the work is. Very seldom turn things down. A lot of people who are big stars, turn stuff down all the time. But a journeyman kind of takes what comes their way, unless it's just really like I can't do that. I can't possibly bring myself to do that job.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just something
Which
that's not
doesn't happen
in your
that often.
comfort
What's
zone.
that?
Something that's maybe like not in your comfort zone or something.
Right. Or just really just awful, badly written, and today there are so many what we call indie films being done, and ultra low budget they're called, and if I wanted to, I could probably do one of those a week, but you just have to kind of be discerning about that because some of them are just awful. and some are great. I just finished one. I just got back from Kentucky where I was shooting a film called Tragedy Girls, and that's going to be really fun, and it's a comedy horror movie. So, when you find gems like that, you take them.
Well, thank you so much for sharing just kind of a little bit about your background and who you are, Loren. What was it like for you working on G.I. Joe, the animated show, and can you tell us a little bit about your character, Barbecue?
That was a very exciting time because that was the first animated series that I did. I had done some animation work before that at the legendary Hanna-Barbera studios, but those weren't series. Those were specials. This was a series, and I had a recurring role on the series, so it was a very exciting time. And I was very young. I was in my early 20s. And all of the other people in the cast were more veterans. I think I was definitely the youngest person on the cast, as I recall. And so I was, surrounded by all these people who had been doing work for, a decade or two. And it was thrilling. It was thrilling being with all those veterans. And the character Barbecue was, I think, originally supposed to be Boston. And I still don't do a very good Boston accent. So auditions, I did an accent like I was from Maine, further up New England. They liked that, and so I got cast. And the character, I think, his face is only seen a couple times. So that was kind of whenever the show would air, I would race home to see it. This is before the days of DVR. And I wanted to see if Barbecue had his mask on in that episode.
So you kind of got to rush home and see what you had worked on recently.
Right. And over the years, I've had a kind of a running joke in my career. I've played a lot of doctors who wear masks. So
Very
so
interesting.
it's like, I guess this started that whole trend. And
it's typecasting in animation.
right. And literally, and this is on camera I'm talking about, but literally
on camera.
I've played a few roles where I've had to audition and then get a call back. They're very, specific about, how they wanted me to play the role, et cetera. And then I got on the set and I was wearing a mask. It's like, well, this could have been a voiceover, right? But Barbecue,
funny.
I think, started that all. There you go.
Absolutely. Well, when you were working on G.I. Joe, did you get a chance to work with Chris Latta or to get to know him during your
Yeah,
sessions?
of course. Oh, yeah. Wild man. He was a wild man. And, I don't know how he did that voice for hours at a time. That is a real vocal ripper.
It had to. I'm sure he had a lot of lozenges.
Yeah, that's the thing most people don't realize, especially in the world of interactive with video games. Many times actors just can't perform for days, couple of days, recovering from all that screaming and agonized death moments. And so when people are watching video games, they should realize, wow, boy, the actors who recorded that really gave it their all, literally, including their voice.
Absolutely. Well, do you have any stories about Chris Latta? Anything that's interesting to share about him or Wally Burr, the director?
Well, Chris was very funny. So between him and Michael Bell, who's really good friend of mine and has been a friend of mine for decades since that show, they would all get into these extended long comedy routines, off mic, and it was very, very funny. It was very funny and very blue, I got to tell you. So I can't repeat any of it.
Okay, I appreciate that. But at least we know they had a good time.
Oh yeah, it was definitely fun recording sessions, and I owe Wally a lot. Wally is very important in my career because after G.I. Joe, or maybe concurrently with it, I can't remember. I think maybe it was kind of at the same time. He brought me in for Defenders of the Earth, which was the first animated show that I was a series regular. So, and he had known me because he had cast me in G.I. Joe, so he brought me in to audition for that, and I got the role and did 65 episodes. So I owe Wally a lot, and I loved working with Wally. He's very specific. I don't mind people who are very specific. Some actors mind that they say, "Oh, don't give me any line readings." It's fine, if that's what the director wants to do. I have no problem with that. And he was very specific about what he wanted. And I think the show, I think the show is really terrific. The acting is terrific. Now, a lot of actors brought their own stuff to the session every day, of course, and had wonderful ideas. But Wally was definitely the skipper.
I hear he was a tank commander, so I kind of think that was why, maybe.
There you go. He kind of was.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing about both of those individuals and about G.I. Joe, the show, because those are definitely very fascinating topics. But what about, you kind of mentioned Defenders of the Earth. Would you tell us a little bit about that show and the role that you played Rick Gordon?
I was Flash Gordon's son, and what they did was they took a bunch of superheroes and gave them all kids. So you had the Phantom and Flash Gordon and Mandrake the Magician, and am I forgetting anybody? I think there was one other superhero, and they all had teenagers.
Okay.
So the Phantom had a daughter, and I was, as I said, Flash Gordon's son, and we got into all these adventures of fighting Ming the Merciless, who was played by one of the greatest actors of all time I've ever worked with, a man named Ron Feinberg, who could actually have played that role on camera because he was gigantic. I forget how tall he was, but he was a very tall man, and he looked kind of like Ming the Merciless. A little makeup and a little mustache, and he could have played the part. But he was a great actor, and again, got to work with a veteran like that for 65 episodes. I learned so much, just like I learned from the veterans of G.I. Joe. And Ron became a lifelong friend before his unfortunate passing.
Yeah. I believe there was another story with Defenders of the Earth where you met your wife.
Yeah. They had another benefit to that show. I worked with a great actor, Peter Mark Richmond, who, if that name may not ring to some people, but if you look him up, he's done like 500, literally 500 TV shows and films, working from the 50s all the way up. It still works present day. In fact, he and I are doing a short movie next week together. But he and I worked together for about a year and a half on the show, and he didn't really talk too much about his private life, but he would send out Christmas cards with his family's picture. At Christmas time, at the Christmas party, I got into a nice conversation with his wife, and she said to him, "Why don't you introduce him to our daughter, Kelly?" And so he called me, and he said, "Do you want to go out on a date with my daughter?" I said, "Wait a second." I went over and I got the Christmas card, and I took a look, and I said, "Oh, okay." So I called her, and we hit it off on the phone, and then we went on a date. 3 months later, we were engaged, and we are still together. It's going to be 28 years, and we have 3 daughters, and so that's a big benefit to have done Defenders of the Earth. So thank you, Wally Burr.
Well, that is such a fascinating story to hear how you met your wife, and congratulations early on you guys' anniversary, and
Thank you.
wonderful that you guys have been together so long and have those 3 beautiful daughters. That's awesome. That's wonderful.
And she's an actress, so we've been able to, one of those rare Hollywood stories of 2 actors who've been together for a long time.
Oh, that's a
So
wonderful tale.
we're approaching, Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward territory. So that'd be great.
Very much. Well, that's definitely something that'll go down in the history books. It's exciting. It really is when you see a couple that's been together for so long like that. So I applaud you for that. That's a big thing.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, Loren, besides the 2 shows we've talked about, the one that I think most people will know you from is your character Robin from Batman the Animated Series. How did that audition come about, and how did that whole process happen for you to become Robin?
Well, I had done, as I said, I'd done G.I. Joe and Defenders of the Earth, and I had done, guest appearances on other shows. So I had enough of a resume that qualified me to get an audition for this show, and I had moved on to a very big voiceover agent at that time. I was with ICM at the time, and they made it possible for me to audition for this show to begin with, and then I got a call back, and then another call back. And it was, the most coveted role, I think, in town for guys my age. Everybody wanted that part, and I especially wanted that part because I grew up on the Batman show, the live-action Batman show. And the idea of being Robin was just beyond thrilling and beyond my wildest dreams that I would grow up to one day be the voice of Robin. I'd done the 3 auditions, and then one day I came home, and my wife had put up a banner saying "Welcome home, Robin," and I said, "What's that?" And she played we had answering machines in those days. She played the answering machine. It was my agent, and he said, "Hello, I'd like to speak to the new voice of Robin. Is he available?" And that's how I found out that I got the part.
That is awesome that your wife did that for you. That's special. Well, that is most fascinating to hear. I'm glad that your wife was able to do that for you and make it such a special event.
Yeah, it really was. It really was a special event. And I was very excited, and then it became kind of like a little bit of a sad story because we did the pilot episode. Then I didn't hear anything, and they actually replaced several of the people in the pilot. They replaced the Joker with Mark Hamill became the Joker. Mm-hmm. It was originally Tim Curry, and they replaced. I think they replaced Alfred, who became Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., and it was Clive Revel originally. And I thought I had been replaced. I thought, wow, I haven't heard anything. I must have been replaced. So my agent found out that no, I hadn't been replaced, but they wanted the show to be very dark and brooding like the movie that had just come out. The live-action Batman. I think it was the first one, wasn't it?
With Michael Keaton, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because the theme songs were extremely similar.
So
they wanted
very much like that. And as you know, in that movie, there's no Robin. So they just simply decided we're just not gonna have a Robin character in the series. So they did a few episodes, and then it was on Fox Kids. And I think the people at Fox said, "We need a Robin." So they decided to start working Robin into the show, and then of course I became part of the fabric of the show, and then I became Nightwing, which was very exciting in the later transition to the other show, which was kind of the same show but just with more characters.
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of a more extended Batman universe, if you will.
Yes.
So what was it like returning to the show when they created the new Batman Adventures and you returned not as Batman's sidekick Robin, but as Nightwing?
Well, there again, I had kind of like this kind of sad moment, but it was just for a second because Andrea Romano, the director, called me, and she said, "I've got some good news and bad news." And I said, "What is it?" She said, "Well, the bad news is you're not going to be Robin anymore." So, of course, then I'm just like dead. Like, no matter what she said after that, there couldn't possibly be any good news. She said, "But the good news is that Robin has gotten a promotion, and now he's going to be Nightwing, and he's going to be his own superhero." And I was just really beyond thrilled about that, because Robin's character was very much a sidekick. There were a couple of great episodes, like in Robin's Reckoning, and where he kind of stood up to Batman and back-talked and, tried to break out on his own. But for the most part, he would be, what are we going to do, Batman?
Yeah.
And Batman would solve the problem, or Batman would come rescue him. Although one of my favorites was Sub-Zero, the movie Sub-Zero, because Robin is very much important to the plot and important to saving Batman in that movie. So I enjoyed that. But he was very much a sidekick, and in Nightwing, he was really his own man. I got to lower my voice, speak a little deeper voice, a little less excited, because he was a cooler guy. That mullet, you got to be cool, So that was fun.
Yeah, seeing him develop into the hero that he became as Nightwing was very fascinating. He did have a little bit darker tone to him, and in his vocalizations were darker, and his look, of course. But it was nice to see him develop into a more established character, because Robin was such an integral part of the Batman animated series, but Nightwing finally kind of spread his wings and became his own thing, and it was very fascinating to see that.
Spread his wings, it's a good analogy, because I took my cue really from Kevin, who's playing Batman, of course, and I know that in the comic book universe, Nightwing eventually becomes Batman. So when I was working on my voice for Nightwing, I thought it should be kind of a transition between my Robin voice and if I was ever to be Batman, and so it's kind of in the middle there. That's how I created that voice. And there was talk for quite a while that they were going to have a Nightwing series, but it never happened. I don't know why. It just never happened.
Oh, that would have been fascinating if Robin had kind of diverged off to his own show. Since they did Superman the animated series and there had some tie-ins, it would have been awesome if they had a Nightwing series to kind of tie into everything as well.
Well, I agree with you.
They should still do it, and they should bring you back.
Well, and here's the thing: is that those of us in the show, those of us who are living, I should say, unfortunately, we've lost a couple of people. We've lost Bob Hastings and Ephraim Zimbalist, but those of us who are still here and still working, we all have the same voices, and recently, ViewMaster did. They're launching a new product that in the old days, the ViewMaster you would press the button and a little still picture would advance. A 3D still picture would advance in front of your eyes. Now, a 360-degree view of a room advances before your eyes, and you're actually in the story.
Oh wow!
It's a great product. They just launched it at Comic-Con. And their first story is they brought all of us back together to do a Batman and Robin episode. So Kevin is in it, I'm in it, and Batgirl is in it, and I'm trying to think who else. Oh, the Penguin is in it.
Oh wow!
So that was a lot of fun. It was a big reunion for us, and it was very, very secret. We couldn't say a word about it, but they as I said, they just launched it at Comic-Con this year, and so I can talk about it now. And maybe that'll lead to, more reunions and more because people come up at these Comic-Cons and they say, why aren't you doing more episodes, new episodes? And it's a really good question. I would really love to be doing that again.
But that must have been fascinating to have that reunion of everyone together.
It was. I have this great photo of us all under the lights created this sort of this beautiful glow in the room. And so when they took this picture, it looked like, wow, but it looks like a professional photographer took that picture and set that all up. And we all took it with our iPhones and shared the picture with each other because it was so exciting to be together again and to be working with Andrea again and Paul Dini, and it was just a wonderful, fun experience.
Well, thank you so much for sharing about that reunion with everyone on the ViewMaster. That had to be a very fascinating time for you guys. And you've played a lot of different characters, but you've also donned different hero masks. And speaking of different heroes, you played Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern, in Batman the Brave and the Bold. And what was it like for you being able to slip on that green ring and don a different mask?
Well, I think it's the dream of every voiceover actor, maybe on-camera actor too, to say these iconic things. The Green Lantern's famous "In brightest day and blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight." very exciting to play that. And I didn't actually audition for that part. They just called and asked me to do it, which was kind of an honor, which was very nice. Got to work with Andrea again. I had not worked with her for a long time. And that show was very different because it was sort of campy. It was intentionally silly, like the original on-camera Batman and Robin from the 60s. Intentionally for laughs, a lot of the stuff.
Very slapsticky and kind of make make fun at the fact that they're making fun or laughing at something.
Exactly. And when I was a kid, of course, watching the on-camera Batman, I took it very seriously. I didn't know it was for laughs.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
I mean, kids didn't understand that, and that's why it was kind of fun. It was one of those shows like how Bugs Bunny was, and the Jay Ward, all those Jay Ward cartoons like Rocky and Bullwinkle. There was something for the kids, but also something for the adults, because the adults were in on the joke, and the kids were just, these are fun characters. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome that they were able to, just offer that role to you. And, that has to be an extreme honor when something like that is, asked of you and you're not actually having to audition. That's pretty special.
Yeah. And it's getting back to the whole concept of journeyman actor. That is very rare. So, the stars get offered things all the time and they don't have to audition. Journeyman actors, 99% of the time we have to audition. Sometimes, not in my case, but I know some actors who've had to audition for roles they've played, and that's really difficult.
I bet it is, especially after you've already played the role and they're asking you to re-audition for it with other people. So
right, exactly.
Well, speaking of other heroes, I know you've also played Danny Rand, the Iron Fist on Avengers.
Yes. The
Earth's Mightiest Heroes. And you, I believe, were the very first actor to voice that character. What was that like for you, being the first?
Now that's a real showbiz story, the ironies of showbiz story, because I did audition for that and did a lot of research. So I looked up his whole history and the fact that he had grown up in the Far East and he had this very Zen kind of upbringing and not only into martial arts, but the whole mentality behind martial arts. So I came up with what I thought was a really descriptive, a voice that really described that kind of person. And it was kind of very quiet and low key, and I got the job. So, and I thought, wow, that's all that research paid off. That was great. So I go into the recording session, and we've recorded a couple of takes, and the producers and creators all sit behind a glass booth while we're in the recording studio. And when they're talking, they turn off their mics, and so we can't hear what they're saying. But our mics are still on, and they can hear what we're saying. Which I often tell new actors. I said, be careful what you say because the mics are always on. And you've probably heard those great William Shatner and Casey Kasem recordings where they just didn't realize or didn't stop to think the microphone is still on. So those become legendary things. So I'm just talking to the other actors. I knew a couple of them from previous things, and we're just shooting the breeze. And I see the producers looking through the window, and then suddenly they're talking, and they're looking through the window again. They're looking at us, and I'm thinking, God, we're not saying anything bad. What? Why are they looking at? So then they come back on mic and they say, Loren, could you just use your regular voice for the character? Try that. And so I tried that, and they said, let's go with that. So after all that research and all that prep, and had I auditioned with my real voice, I don't know that I would have gotten it. Maybe so. I don't know. But I auditioned with this other voice, which got me the part. But when I was finally recording it, they wanted me to use my own voice.
Well, that works, I guess. It makes it easier for you.
It worked for me. I was thrilled and happy to be doing it. It was a lot of fun. And then I did a interactive game as the character too.
Well, that's it's always good to be able to use your voice in multiple ways and diversities, and being able to play on the game and on the show, being the first to voice that character. That's definitely legendary and iconic, and it'll definitely go on the history books for Comic-Con and other people that are into the geek stuff, because it'll be something that when they look that character up, bam, you'll be the first one that voiced it. So
right, that's exciting.
It is very exciting. Well, Loren, with you playing the part of Robin and Nightwing on Batman the Animated Series and the new Batman Adventures, growing up as a kid, I also watched Adam West on the old Batman show in the 60s. Well, not in the 60s. I wasn't born then, but
Right.
you guys, I grew
Yeah,
up
I wasn't either, by the way.
but I grew up like you did watching that show, and I've watched different variations of Batman and the different things they've done over the years. But you as Robin and Nightwing and Kevin as Batman, Mark Hamill as the Joker, you guys, Bob Hastings as Commissioner Gordon, and Ephraim Zimbalist as Alfred. You guys are my cast of Batman and Robin and everyone in company, because
Thanks.
growing up with that show, it became my mainstay and my go-to. And when I hear those different characters, those are the voices that come to mind, are that cast of people from the original series. So I just wanted to let you know that and tell you how special it is to have you on the show.
Oh, well, thank you. And we get that a lot at the different autograph shows and Comic-Cons that we do. Kevin and I finally did one together, if you can believe that. We had never been booked into the same one, and we did a Wizard World just a couple months ago, and that was the first time. And then we're coming up is the Long Beach Comic-Con. We're doing that together. But we had a talk about this, and people all tell us the same thing. They say, you guys are the definitive voices of Batman and Robin, and why aren't you doing the show anymore? And we need to see more episodes of that show. So hopefully that'll happen, because there's a huge fan base out there who feel the same way you do. Say that you guys are the voices. And I became friends with through the magic of Facebook with this wonderful. He's not only a wonderful writer, but also a filmmaker. His name's Kyle Higgins, and he's been writing the Nightwing books for quite a while now. And he said when he wrote the books, he wrote it with my voice in his head, and I was very flattered about that. And then he recently did his own on-camera film. As I said, he's a filmmaker, and I did a role for him in that he wrote for me, which was all nice how that came out of the Batman universe.
Most definitely, to have somebody who's been so impacted by it that when they're writing, they're thinking about you because you are the inspiration for them. So
very, very flattering. Very flattering.
Very much so. Well, if Andrea Romano is listening to this, she is fantastic, wonderful, and I really hope that you guys bring Loren Lester and Kevin Conroy back, and everyone that's available, because it's an amazing cast of people, and we would definitely love to see more of them on the shows.
I know Andrea would love to do that. I think it's not in her hands. I think hopefully the Warner Brothers universe is listening to this, and the people at Warner Brothers will do that.
Well, that too. To the execs at Warner Brothers, we want it back. Well, speaking of all the voices from the past, what was it like working with Bob Hastings and Ephraim Zimbalist and Michael Ansara, who played Mr. Freeze?
Well, I have to tell you that those three, and then also a number of the villains, were TV and film icons that I had grown up with. So that was really thrilling to work with Roddy McDowall, who had been an actor since the golden age of Hollywood, and Michael and Sarah, who had been in, hundreds of TV shows. And he was just a, great professional. And he that character he created was I don't want to use the word cool, because that would not be right for somebody who's frozen. But it was a very low-key, cool, wonderful performance. And Ephraim Zimbalist, of course, I had grown up with in the FBI. The FBI was a big TV show when I was a kid. It's like, wow, working with Ephraim. And he always wanted people to call him Effie. And I thought that was fun. So you don't, the guy who's pulling guns on criminals in the FBI, he should not be called Effie, but that was his nickname. And he was a very sophisticated man. And he could also have played Alfred on camera, because he was not British, but just this side of British. He was so sophisticated and upper class as a human being. And Bob Hastings, I grew up with a show called McHale's Navy. He was on that, and so that was exciting to be seeing him. And he had a great history. He was a child actor and had a beautiful Irish tenor voice, singer too. Most people don't know that.
Well, that's very fascinating. I didn't know that, so thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I miss them both.
I bet. And you mentioned Roddy McDowall, and he played the Mad Hatter, which his voice was super iconic as that character. We didn't see him a whole lot, but when he was in Batman, he was very sinister.
Yes, very much so.
And
He's great performance.
very much so. And it is sad that we've lost several of these people, but life happens and things go on, unfortunately. So.
But it was, yes, it really is, but it was really always so exciting to walk in the door because I never knew who would be in the cast. And in those days, we would all be there. Nowadays, when you do a show, you're lucky to have one or two other people. This Viewmaster thing we did, everybody was there, which was great. But most shows you do now, you show up and you're by yourself or maybe with one other person because schedules are so crazy. So in those days, we did it like we were, in a play together. We were all there, 99% of the time. People like Frank Welker, who would be doing, 10 voiceover sessions a day, would not be there. And they say, oh, Frank's going to come in later and do these voices. But everybody else would be there, and so I would never know who would be. I'd never know who was in the cast. So I'd walk in like, oh my God, there's Ed Asner. There's all these huge people from television and film.
Wow, I mean that had to be fascinating. Kind of a surprise in the box. You open up the studio doors, and bam, who's here today?
Always exciting. Always exciting.
Very much so. Well, thank you for sharing all of that, all of those stories about all those people from the past who were such an integral part of the show.
Of course.
Well, Loren, thank you so much for sharing your fascinating stories about G.I. Joe and Batman the Animated Series and being the first voice of Danny Rand. You've shared so many wonderful stories with us, and especially about meeting your wonderful and beautiful bride. And what kind of advice would you give someone who's interested in pursuing a voiceover career or an acting career?
Don't do it. No, I say that somewhat facetiously. It is a brutally difficult business now. Back when I started, there were not that many people doing it. There was still quite a bit of competition, but there's a difference between auditioning for something against 20 to 50 people and auditioning against hundreds, maybe thousands, because now with home recording, it's so easy to record an audition and send it in. So sometimes these auditions, they get auditions from all over the country. And I mean, literally hundreds, thousands of submissions. So, and I guarantee you, anybody who says to you, oh, I listened to all the auditions, they're probably not telling the truth, because it's impossible to listen to that level of submissions. So it's anybody who does it is going to need iron guts and need a plan for the long haul, because it is, if you're just starting out, it's very, very impossibly difficult. I would say, most importantly, take classes here in Los Angeles. There's some very reputable people, also in New York as well. I can't speak for the rest of the country because I don't know, but take a reputable class and learn the basics, because there's a different skill set to it than, if you're the star of your community theater or the star of your high school show, or you learn theater, or maybe you've done a few films, independent films. It's a whole different skill set when you are doing voiceover. And if you don't know what the ins and outs of that are, you absolutely will not be able to compete. So take classes, be absolutely ready. Don't come to Los Angeles and say, I want to get an agent and I want to start doing voiceovers. It's just not going to happen that way. I mean, it may happen for the 1 in a million person, just like the 1 in a million person who comes here and says, I want to be in the movies, and then tomorrow they're a star. I mean, it does happen. It does happen, but it is a rough business right now to get into. Hate to be a damper on that, but that's the way it is.
No, I mean, honesty is a good thing. I want my listeners to know, if it's something that they really want and that's something they really want to pursue, that it isn't going to be a piece of cake. It's going to be hard work and determination beyond all things and above in all things. It's going to be their number one goal, and no matter what it takes, they're going to do it. Or maybe it's not for them, so.
Having said all that kind of negative stuff, I mean, I would never, ever discourage somebody from wanting to do it. I mean, if they have a passion for it and that's what they want to do and that's their dream, they got to go for it. They got to go and not give themselves like, well, I'm going to do it for 2 years. Give myself it sometimes takes a long time to break in. So, like you said, be in it for the long haul. If you're going to commit to it and be in it for the long haul, then I say, go for it. Pursue your dream. Just know that these people who say, oh, I'm going to give it 2 years or 4 years or 5 years, that's just an artificial number, because even me, after all of these years, there are certain places where I have never auditioned. There are certain people I have never worked for. So it does take a long time.
Well, thank you for sharing with us and for, sharing the positive and the potentially negative side of that. But, nothing is 100% either or in life.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, you've kind of mentioned that you have the indie film coming out soon. Are there any other up-and-coming voiceover projects or films or anything that you're involved with at this time that you can share?
This year I have another film coming out, which I'm very excited about. It's called A Week in London, and it's a mockumentary, a character who's kind of very much like a Paris Hilton, only her name is London, not Paris.
Okay.
And I'm her right-hand man. I'm in charge of her entire life. And I play a snobby guy who smokes a pipe and drives her around in a vintage Rolls Royce. Very, very fun role, and that's coming out this year.
Okay, great. Do you have a website or a way in which you can be contacted if somebody would just want to reach out to you? Or
Yes, I'm on Facebook, and also my Twitter handle is ActorLL, and then my website is LorenLester.com, which is a very catchy title, I think, for my website.
Absolutely.
I spent a lot of time thinking about that. That's a great place for people to see what's coming up, and also I have tons of clips on there from the stuff I've done over the years, some vintage stuff and newer stuff, and people are interested. They can see me playing all kinds of different parts, doctors, detectives, lawyers, etc.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Loren. I just have one final question before we let you go. And the question is, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Oh, I'm glad it wasn't going to be one of those inside the actor's studio questions. What is your favorite color? And no, gosh, that's hard. Well, I guess. Oh, I know. I'd like the news report to say, at the time of his death, Loren Lester was the oldest living working actor. Fair enough?
Yeah, that's good. What more can you hope for?
I've known a few actors in my life who worked into the age of over 100, and do you know the actor Norman Lloyd?
The name sounds familiar, but I'm not putting a face to the name.
So Norman Lloyd, who's turning 102 this year, is the only actor, either living or deceased, who worked with all of these people. Alfred Hitchcock, Charlie Chaplin, Orson Welles, Jean Renoir. He's the only one who worked with, and he actually directed and produced for Alfred Hitchcock later on. But he is still a working actor, and he was in the movie recently, Trainwreck.
Oh, wow. That is most fascinating.
So he is still at it, and that would be, I would love that. And they'd say, Loren Lester, who died at 108, just finished his last film.
Wow.
Or at 108 did once again reprised his role of Robin.
It's the Robin Beyond.
Robin Beyond, right? Way beyond.
We brought Bruce back when he was older. Why not Robin, right?
Right.
We'll call it Nightwing Beyond. I'm sorry, Nightwing Beyond. Oh, wow. That is most fascinating. And, what more could you hope for than, to have such a legacy that you've done something that no one else has done and you've lived to an age that no one else has, so.
Well, yeah, and when you do things, you don't, when you're working as a journeyman actor, you never know where these things are going to go, and none of us knew at the time that we'd still be talking about this show almost 30 years later, and that it would be so iconic. We knew we had something special, and we were part of something special, and it was fun and absolute delight to be doing it. but nobody, and you never know that it's going to be going 30 years later. I just went to a reunion of Rock and Roll High School, which is one of the first films I did, and that's a film that is still, 30 years later, people are still talking about and going to see, and you never know when something is going to become legendary like that. So it definitely a thrill to have been part of a few projects like that.
Well, Loren, it has been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the show today. Would you please just give us a closeout as Robin from Batman, the animated series?
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure for me, too, so thanks very much for asking me. I have been here talking to Trenton Larkin, so this is Loren Lester, the voice of Dick Grayson, also known as Robin and Nightwing. And you've been listening to Who Did That Voice? And now you know who did it. Batman! Come here a second. I've been listening to this show. Who did that voice? I can't tell who did it. Do you have any idea? Is it the Joker, the Riddler? Who did that voice?
Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Loren Lester, the voice of Robin from Batman, the animated series. I hope everyone has a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, too. Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us this Saturday, December 31st, for our 31st episode. Our special guest is Matt Hill, the voice of Captain N from Captain N the Game Master. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, are you ready to win some awesome prizes? All you have to do is like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter for your chance to be instantly and automatically entered for your chance to win.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.